This is Darren from Danger by Degrees. The last video was a summary of a discussion of what happened on August the 4th. Right now, 157 lives are known to have been lost, and anywhere from 60 to 80 people are still missing. What caused the explosion? It was a large pile, about 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate. What is ammonium nitrate? Ammonium nitrate is a combination of ammonia-based salts with nitric acid when combined forms ammonium nitrate. Ammonium nitrate is used in fertilizers, but it's also, because of its chemical properties, is very explosive. So it is often mixed with other chemicals to create, shall we say, more cheaper, more affordable explosives. It's also been known to be a very dangerous product to deal with. It has caused numerous explosions. The most recent being in Beirut, another being in Tianjin in China. There's also a very, very deadly explosion in Texas. Ammonium nitrate, by its very nature, if you burn it, it won't usually catch on fire. It'll melt, or it'll sort of look like it singes. So if you put a direct flame on it, it really doesn't do much. But if you put an accelerant or something combustible, something flammable around it, this is where the danger comes in. Ammonium nitrate by itself, it's an oxidizer. So that means when it breaks down, it ends up providing oxygen, which is one of three things that creates fire. So you need heat, so you need the energy source, so heat. You need fuel, which is basically the substance that's burning, and you need oxygen to sustain it. So when it comes to that, as an oxidizer, ammonium nitrate ends up being able, once the heat and once the fuel source is going, it provides the fuel, or it provides the oxygen to continue the cycle, or the fire triangle, if you will. Heat, oxygen, and a fuel source. So something to get the heat going, something to sustain the heat once it's going, and oxygen to continue the chemical process that is, of course, fire. There was also fireworks that were nearby. This can be seen in some of the videos when you hear the and you can see the initial series of explosions before the big explosion that created the unfortunate big explosion that released most of the energy. What you ended up having was a series of small explosions, which finally led to the big explosion being in the warehouse that is now a giant crater in the corner of one of the bays of Beirut. So basically what ended up happening was, possibly, according to reports, there was a man who was carrying out some welding in a nearby building. The welding probably caused a fire. The fire then spread to nearby buildings that had the accelerant, or the, shall we say, heat source, or the start of the fire itself. So these being fireworks. The fireworks were going off, and as the fireworks, and there was probably sufficient numbers of the fireworks, you ended up having like a domino going off. First the fire then got to a fuel source, or something to burn. The burning then led to something even bigger to burn. And what you ended up seeing was the fireworks going off. And then the fireworks started exploding. Individual fireworks were going off, but then there was probably large amounts of fireworks that contain blast, like the blasting powder. And they started to blow up. The blowing up then got worse and worse, and then as you ended up seeing a certain critical mass of explosions happening, the fire not only spread, but also what was ending up happening is that the explosions probably disturbed and ended up kicking up a lot of, shall we say, dust. And if you've ever seen like a grain mill go kaboom, or any kind of large powder that is ending up being thrown into the air, it creates this giant surface area for a fire to basically just go out of control. So what you ended up having was First, the fireworks going off. First, what you saw was the welder, or the source of ignition. This started a fire that got and spread. So then the fires ended up getting into a source of explosive material, being fireworks. The explosive fireworks were then going off individually, and then as more and more fireworks were going off, there was probably a large number of highly explosive, or shall we say highly illuminating fireworks that then went off all together at the same time, creating the bigger explosions. Those bigger explosions were getting in a series, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They disturbed all the ammonium nitrate. The ammonium nitrate then got all splashed in the air, and what you ended up having was this very powdery, fine oxidizing agent, which was now mixing in with the accelerant, or the combustible material. The combustible material then ended up creating one giant, shall we say, flame. The powder basically ignited, and being that it was an oxidizer, it then released a large amount of chemical energy, which then hit the main, probably the main pile of the ammonium nitrate. That all went up in one giant boom. So you saw one big pre-explosion, and then there was the big blast that you could literally see, this white cloud that just came. And it was the pre-wave, this giant force of kinetic energy that was then released, which then caused the vast majority of the damage all across Beirut. So when the explosion occurred, you're basically looking at something that had possibly, according to some estimates, possibly upwards of 1/10 of the explosive force of Hiroshima. Think about that. Hiroshima was a nuclear explosion, whereas this was a non-nuclear, but still a man-made explosion, obviously, but it literally created an explosion 1/10 the level of Hiroshima. Well, this explosion that ended up ripping through most of Beirut was just one example of what ammonium nitrate can do. For instance, take the Texas City, in Texas obviously, explosion. In there, this happened in 1947. It's believed that a cigarette that was tossed started a fire aboard a ship that was carrying upwards of about 2,300 tons, or about just over 2 million kilograms of ammonium nitrate. They were packed in just simple paper sacks. Basically, when the chemical mix caught fire and mixed with probably some other things, probably like the paper, it started burning. Once the heat was sufficient and it was sustained from the internal oxygen or the oxidizing properties of the ammonia nitrate, it then exploded violently. Effectively, it blasted Texas City just to the ground, and it was basically so powerful that it was actually felt in Galveston, Texas, upwards of about 16 kilometers away. The end result from this detonation was that it hit another ship that was also carrying even more ammonia nitrate. It also exploded. It set fires to nearby chemical tanks, who knows what was in those tanks, and large numbers of oil stores. So oil, being a very volatile product by itself, ended up catching on fire, plus the chemicals, plus everything in general, ended up creating a series of explosions that ended up killing over 581 people, which probably, by and large, was the worst type of disaster of this nature anywhere. In conclusion, ammonium nitrate is nitric acid and ammonium combined. What happened in Beirut? Three things. One, there was an open flame or some kind of heat energy or energy that started a fire. that then led to a bigger fire, which ended up hitting some accelerants, being the fireworks. The fireworks then ended up eventually going off and spread near to the ammonium nitrate, which then, by most accounts, when you see all the explosions that were going on, disrupted and ended up probably breaking many of the bags that had the ammonium nitrate in it. This got airborne. So a combination of both the heat source, the ammonium nitrate was mixed with an accelerant, and the fact that the ammonium nitrate was now airborne and in a powdery nature. If you've seen any grain silos that go boom, this mix all came together and ended up creating the perfect conditions for the release of all of that pent-up chemical energy, and ended up creating an explosion that was basically 10% of the Hiroshima level. This blast was felt all the way into Cyprus, and it was something so deadly that it ended up making possibly as many as 300,000 people in Beirut homeless. What was contributing to this? One, there were activities around there that were exposing heat sources near the ammonium nitrate. There were other accelerants, oxidizers, explosives, anything that could be flammable were near the ammonium nitrate. All of this combined, plus the ammonium nitrate was not stored in a safe manner by anybody's guess. All these factors came together. The fire broke out. The fire hit the accelerants. The accelerants hit the ammonium nitrate. And you ended up having this big explosion. This has been Darren. This is another Danger by Degrees episode. Join us as we continue exploring the events of the Beirut disaster